Okay, so here is my brief introduction to computer networking. I'm going to be covering the OSI 7-layer model. That handles everything from the physical media used to connect the different computers or different parts of the network, through to the actual application layer, which is all where the programs run and manage the entire connection. So each layer is responsible for a particular part of the connection protocols and that sort of stuff. And I'll go into detail as to each of these. So first up we have the physical layer. The physical layer is basically the hardware, be it Cat6 cable, a Wi-Fi adapter, or a fiber optic cable. It's designed to basically send and receive direct those signals used to communicate the ones and zeros between the two machines. Those machines could actually be anything from a network switch through to a fully running server and that sort of stuff. The data link layer is the next layer of the sequence, and basically it's making sure that the data transmitted from point A to point B in a single step of a network is transmitted correctly, so it performs basic error checking, maintains the logical links, and that sort of stuff. Next up is the network layer. That's basically handling the routing between different networks and making sure that messages are redirected where they need to go. This also supports the IP or Internet Protocol, operates on this layer anyway. Then there's the transport layer. Now this is responsible for making end-to-end connection happen. So this can be from one network here in Australia all the way across to something in the US or Europe through multiple other networks on the way, because basically the internet is just a network of networks. Then we have the session layer. Now this maintains that connection between our computer and the remote computer. So regardless of how individual messages or packets are transmitted through the network, the session layer makes sure that all the stuff coming and going is appropriately assembled and it appears like it's just a one direct connection. Then we have the presentation layer. This is more concerned with the encryption and compression of the data. So the encryption to make sure that it is secure, and the compression to make sure that it reduces the amount of bandwidth that it uses. Then finally, we have the application layer. This is basically the stuff that you will see. So it is the HTTPS or Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. And that's basically your web pages. We also have File Transfer Protocol, FTP. And we have two forms of mail protocol listed here on this slide, which is SMTP or Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, or the Post Office Protocol version 3. Sorry, bit of a mind blank there. Telnet, yeah, it still exists. Never use it. It's wrong. I can go into the details, but there's no need to here. And so to give you, I suppose, an analogy for breaking down this model, the physical layer is like the truck that runs the messages back and forth. Actually, no, let's start at the top. First off, we have the scribe. They actually write the message. Then we have a translator that will actually encode the message so I can get to the next person. We have a negotiator who makes sure that the message will go through the network to get to the right person. We have a middle manager who basically collects all this sort of stuff and then gets it ready to send it on its way through those various steps. We have the mailroom guy, which makes sure that it routes its way through the network to get to that end destination every step along the way, really. We have an envelope stuffer who will pack the message into a mail bag and get it ready to go onto the truck. And then the truck will drive from A to B, and then the next truck, the mail at B will get unpacked, checked, stuffed into a new bag, loaded onto another truck that goes from B to C, and so on and so forth through the network until it hits the next layer or the next chunk, say, or different network, where it'll go up to the mailroom guy who'll check it and make sure it's all going in the right direction. If it's going the wrong way, or they'll re-navigate it to another point, or if the mailbag is too full or the truck's completely loaded up, they'll put it onto a different truck to go a different direction to make sure it gets there, that kind of stuff. So each of these layers performs a very particular function. Next up, in relation to the OSI 7-layer model, we have the TCP IP stack. Now, the TCP IP stack is a little bit older in terms of history of the internet, and it was used to describe what it was basically operating with initially, and then these subsequent layers have been split up to make it easier to understand. So the OSI reference layer, OSI reference model is actually a better way to view things, although there are some things covered in the TCP stack that are a little simpler and that sort of stuff. So basically the network interface covers your data link and your physical addresses, which is the bottom of that stack. We have the networking and transport, which are basically identical, and then the application, which covers the session, presentation, and application. Now the question becomes what data gets packed in. So if we actually have a look at this, we have the actual data here, we have a segment that it's packed into, then a packet or datagram that's sent from one computer to one network to the other one. But before it can travel on those networks, it needs to be packed into a frame, and then finally a data stream. Now the data stream is just the ones and zeros. The frame is the transmission from one point in the network to another point in the network, and this might be from router to router to router. Then the packets and datagrams go from networks to networks to networks. And then you look at the segment, layer 4, the transport. That's basically the addressed stuff. And then finally, when it hits the remote computer, the data can be extracted, reassembled, and with the session, presentation, and application side of things, so that you can actually access and use it. So there's a lot going on in the background when we actually look at this kind of stuff. Finally, how on earth do you remember all this stuff? And the great way, and there are probably many out there, much like naming the planets. In this case, it is please do not throw sausage pizza away, which covers your physical, your data link, your network, transport, session, presentation, and application layers. I hope you found this useful, and that is it.